Did you know the Vaccine Injury Act of 1986 bans you from suing if you have a vaccine injury? You can't sue the pharmaceutical manufacturer, you can't sue your doctor or anyone else if you are harmed by a faulty or misleading vaccine. RFK Jr. discussed this act during his presidential campaign last year. Now that he's been chosen by Trump for HHS secretary, the question is, will he get rid of the Vaccine Injury Act of 1986? Here he is at a town hall last year talking about what led to the Vaccine Injury Act of 1986.
The most popular vaccine in the world is the DTP, diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. We got rid of it in this country because it was causing injuries, brain injuries, severe brain injuries, or death to 1 in every 300 children. We used it in the 80s, and that's why there was all this litigation against companies that precipitated the passage of the Vaccine Act that then gave them immunity from liability.
Essentially, a vaccine came out that was very harmful. Tons of people were injured or died, and there were huge lawsuits and repercussions for the pharmaceutical manufacturers. So the pharmaceutical manufacturers went to Congress and said, we are not going to make any more childhood vaccines unless you give us liability protection. And so Congress coughed up a law. Reagan even signed it, and the manufacturers got immense protection. Now, a fund was created for victims of injuries, but the parameters were so stringent for actually filing for a slice of that fund if you are injured by it, that to this day the fund has barely been dipped into. Vast majority of people who do file claims to try to get some sort of injury compensation, their claims are denied. RFK Jr. talks about how the industry, pediatricians giving kids vaccines, it all exploded after this act was passed because now there was immense protection for the pharmaceutical industry, and suddenly the quality control checks went away. There weren't repercussions for creating a bad product thanks to this act.
When we passed the Vaccine Act, when I was a kid, there was only 3 vaccines, and I was compliant. But when we passed the Act, it made vaccines very, very valuable. And all of a sudden, there was a gold rush to add a lot of new the schedule for diseases that aren't even casually contagious, like rotavirus, like hepatitis B. Why are we giving hepatitis B to a 1-day-old child? Hepatitis B, you know, the major vectors for that are it's sexually transmitted or by needles. Why would you give that to a 1-day-old child? It's really a profit motive.
Oh, and whatever happened to that hazardous that led to the Injury Act of 1986? Well, where it went and its long-term side effects are pretty chilling.
In Europe, they don't use it. In America, they don't use it. But we give it to 161 million African children a year. So Bill Gates asked the Danish government to support that program and said it saved 30 million lives. The Danish government said, show us the data. He wasn't able to. So they went to Africa and did their own studies. And they looked at 30 years of DTP data. And what they found shocked them all. They found that girls who got the DTP were dying at 10 times the rate of unvaccinated girls. But they were dying of things that nobody had ever associated with. And they were dying of diphtheria, of anemia, malaria, bilharzia, pulmonary disease, respiratory disease, and pneumonia. And nobody noticed for 30 years that it was the girls and not the unvaccinated girls who were dying. And what had happened is these girls were not dying of diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. The vaccine had protected them against those, but it had also ruined their immune systems. And they were unable to defend themselves against other just minor diseases that other kids who had hardy immune systems were able to fend off. So that's why you need these long-term studies, and that's why I'm worried that we don't do that here in the United States.
So do you think RFK Jr. will have what it takes during this 4-year Trump term to try to repeal the Injury Act of 1986? Let me know your thoughts down below.